The expensive wine in my glass tasted bitter as I overheard my mother-in-law Martha's shrill laughter from the next room. I was supposed to be in the kitchen, helping prepare dinner like the good waitress they thought I was. Instead, I was listening to them plan what they thought would be the ultimate humiliation for their son's low-class wife. "It's perfect," Martha gushed to my sister-in-law Emma. "We'll invite her to Richard's birthday dinner at La Maison d'Or. When the bill comes, we'll all act shocked that we're expected to pay for our own meals. She'll be mortified when she can't afford it." Emma's gleeful response made my blood boil. She'll probably try to pay with her waitress tips. If they only knew. La Maison d'Or wasn't just any luxury restaurant. It was the flagship location of my international restaurant empire. The simple waitress they loved to mock had built a culinary empire spanning 3 continents. But my husband Richard's family was too busy looking down their noses at me to ever question where our beautiful house and luxury cars really came from. "Are you sure about this, Mother?" Richard's uncertain voice carried through the door. Always weak-willed, always eager to please his domineering mother. "Mia's been working really hard lately." "At a diner," Martha scoffed. "Really, Richard, when will you admit that marrying that waitress was a mistake? Your father and I had such hopes for you and Victoria." "Ah yes, Victoria. The socialite they'd wanted Richard to marry instead of me. Last I heard, she was facing fraud charges for running a Ponzi scheme. My security team had compiled quite a file on her. Just think how embarrassed she'll be," Emma pressed, "having to admit she can't afford to eat at a real restaurant. Maybe it'll finally make her realize she doesn't belong in this family." I checked my phone as another message came in from my executive team. The acquisition of our latest restaurant group was complete, adding another 50 locations to our portfolio. My net worth had just increased by several $1,000,000. But to my in-laws, I was still just the waitress their precious Richard had married on a whim. "Fine," Richard finally agreed. "But be gentle about it, Mother. Mia's sensitive about money." "Oh, Richard, if you only knew how wrong you were. I wasn't sensitive about money. I was sensitive about being underestimated. About watching you let your family treat me like dirt while living off the fruits of my success." I slipped my phone back into my pocket as Martha called out, "Mia, is that dinner ready yet?" "Really, Richard, couldn't you have at least married someone who knows how to cook properly?" "Coming right up." I called back cheerfully, adding the finishing touches to the gourmet meal I'd prepared. Another secret they didn't know: I trained as a chef in Paris before starting my restaurant empire. The simple meals I served them were worth hundreds of dollars per plate. As I carried the perfectly plated dishes to the dining room, I thought about the file folder in my office safe. 5 years of documented insults, cruel pranks, and condescending behavior. 5 years of watching Richard fail to stand up for me. 5 years of playing the role of the humble waitress while building my empire in secret. Finally, Martha sniffed, examining her plate critically. "Though I suppose we can't expect restaurant quality from someone who just carries plates for a living." I smiled serenely as they began to eat, watching them devour every bite of my amateur cooking. "The invitation to Richard's birthday dinner next week is so kind," I said innocently. "But are you sure La Maison d'Or isn't too expensive? I know how exclusive it is." "Oh, don't worry about that," Emma smirked. "We'll all take care of ourselves. You just worry about your own plate." If they noticed how my smile widened slightly, they didn't show it. They were too busy exchanging knowing looks, probably imagining my upcoming humiliation. Later that night, as Richard slept soundly beside me, I made a phone call to Pierre, the executive chef at La Maison d'Or. "Everything is prepared for next week's special event?" "Ah oui, Madame Chen," he confirmed. "The private dining room is reserved and a special menu you designed will be perfect." Though he hesitated. "Are you sure about the prices?" "Absolutely sure," I replied, thinking of Martha's smug face. "Make sure every item on their special menus has the full price listed. I want there to be no confusion about the cost." I hung up and opened my laptop, reviewing the latest financial reports from my restaurant group. Richard stirred beside me. "Working late again, honey? You shouldn't push yourself so hard at that diner." I closed the laptop, showing quarterly revenues in the millions. "Just trying to learn more about the restaurant business, dear. Mother says you should focus on being a proper wife instead of working so much," he mumbled sleepily. Maybe she's right. I thought about the reservations for next week, about the special menus being prepared, about the security cameras that would capture every moment of their planned humiliation. Your mother's usually right, isn't she? I replied softly. I'm sure next week's dinner will be quite educational for everyone. As Richard drifted back to sleep, I checked my email to find confirmation that the private investigator's report on Martha's secret gambling habit had arrived. My mother-in-law loved to brag about her family's old money, but I knew the truth about their dwindling fortune. Just like I knew about Emma's maxed-out credit cards and Richard's failed investment attempts that I quietly covered with his money. I'd spent 5 years playing the role they assigned me, the humble waitress who married above her station. 5 years documenting every insult, every snide remark, every attempt to humiliate me. 5 years watching Richard choose his family's cruelty over defending his wife. Next week, they'd learn what happened when you underestimate the quiet one. Next week, they'd discover that the waitress they loved to mock had been serving them much more than dinner. I closed my laptop and smiled in the darkness. Sometimes revenge is a dish best served with a very, very expensive price tag. The night of Richard's birthday dinner arrived crisp and clear. I watched through La Maison's sophisticated security system as Martha and Emma arrived early, huddling with the maitre d' they thought was in on their plan. In reality, Jean-Luc had worked for me for a decade and was thoroughly briefed on the evening's true entertainment. They're here, Madame Chen, he texted me. Your mother-in-law tried to slip me $100 to play along with humiliating you. I've added it to the evidence folder. I adjusted my simple dress, Channel's latest though the label was hidden, and checked my reflection. They expected a waitress trying desperately to look wealthy. They get exactly what they expected right up until the moment they didn't. Ready to go. Richard adjusted his tie nervously. Mother was very specific about being on time. Of course, dear. I grabbed my cheap purse, actually a one-of-a-kind designer piece that cost more than Martha's car. We wouldn't want to keep your mother waiting. The private dining room at La Maison d'Or was exactly as I designed it. Elegant, intimidating, and equipped with hidden cameras to capture every moment. Martha and Emma were already seated, practically vibrating with malicious anticipation. Oh, Mia dear. Martha's voice dripped with false concern. I hope you're not uncomfortable here. We know it's different from your usual workplace. I took my seat, noting how they deliberately placed me facing the room's massive price display wine vault. It's lovely, I replied softly. Very elegant. Well, Emma smirked. We all know Richard's done his best to elevate you. The special menus appeared, thick leather-bound volumes with gold embossing. I designed them myself, making sure every astronomical price was clearly displayed. Martha and Emma made a show of studying theirs while watching me from the corner of their eyes. Order anything you like, Martha said grandly. It's a special occasion after all. I pretended to pale at the prices, watching Martha's satisfied smile grow. Oh my, I whispered exactly as they expected. These prices. Something wrong, dear? Martha's voice carried through the room. Surely you can afford one dinner at a proper restaurant? Though I suppose these prices are rather different from your diner. The sommelier approached, another longtime employee who knew exactly who I was. May I suggest the wine pairing menu? He offered innocently, though I should mention it adds considerably to the cost. Oh yes, Emma jumped in. We must have the wine pairings, all of us. She emphasized the last words, smirking in my direction. I watched them order the most expensive items on the menu, saw them add costly supplements and extras, noted how they kept glancing at me with poorly hidden glee. The bill would be astronomical, exactly as I planned. And for Madame. The sommelier turned to me. Just water, I demurred. I have to work tomorrow. At the diner. Emma couldn't help adding. Don't worry, we understand if you need to be economical. Course after course arrived, each more elaborate than the last. I watched my in-laws devour the expensive delicacies while making snide comments about my small salad. Richard, as usual, said nothing to defend me. Finally, the moment they'd been waiting for arrived. Jean-Luc appeared with a leather folder containing the bill. As requested, he announced clearly separate checks for everyone. Martha's eyes gleamed as she reached for her check. Then her face went pale. There must be some mistake. She stammered, staring at the total. No mistake, madame, Jean-Luc replied smoothly. Your portion, including wine pairings and supplements, comes to $2,850. Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of green as she looked at her own bill. Richard was frantically checking his wallet. But, Martha sputtered. This is impossible. We can't. Is there a problem? I asked innocently. That is. Martha's hands shook. There's been a mistake with my credit card. Richard, surely you can. Actually, Richard looked embarrassed. I seem to be a bit short. How unfortunate, I said softly, standing up. Let me help with that. I walked to the wine vault, entering my private code. The glass door swung open as my in-laws watched in confusion. Jen, look, I called out. Please add their bills to my house account. Of course, Madame Chen, he replied smoothly. As always. The silence in the room was deafening. Madame Chen, Martha whispered. Oh yes, I smiled, removing my CEO badge from my purse. I suppose I should properly introduce myself. Maya Chen, CEO and owner of the International Chen Restaurant Group, including La Maison d'Or and its sister locations worldwide. But you're a waitress, Emma stammered. No, I corrected gently. I own the restaurants, all of them, including that little diner where you think I work, which, by the way, grossed $8 million last year. I turned to Richard, whose face had gone completely white. Honey, remember when you told me to focus on learning the restaurant business? Well, surprise. This is impossible. Martha found her voice. You can't be. I pressed a button on my phone, and the dining room's hidden screens lit up. Financial reports, property deeds, bank statements, 5 years of documented success while they mocked and belittled me. Oh, and Martha, I added casually, those gambling debts you've been hiding? The ones that have eaten through your old money fortune. I bought all of them last week, just like I bought Emma's credit card debt. And Richard's failed investments? I've been covering those for years. They stared at me in horror as years of carefully constructed superiority crumbled around them. You see, I continued sipping my water. While you were all busy looking down on the waitress, I was building an empire. Every insult, every snide remark, every attempt to humiliate me, I documented all of it. Would you like to see? I nodded to Jean-Luc, who distributed thick folders to each of them. 5 years of evidence, including tonight's attempted humiliation, all carefully preserved. You planned this, Martha accused, her voice shaking. No, Martha. You planned this. I just let you do what you do best, underestimate me. By the way, I added, I'm foreclosing on your house next week. Those gambling debts, you know, and Emma, your credit cards have been canceled. As for you, Richard. My husband looked up from the financial documents with tears in his eyes. Mia. I had no idea. That's the problem. I cut him off. You never bothered to ask. Too busy letting your mother run our marriage. Speaking of which, I handed him another folder. Divorce papers. Don't worry about the prenup. I never needed your money. I had my own. You can't do this. Martha tried one last time. We're family. No, I corrected her. You made it very clear I was never family. I was just the waitress who didn't belong. Well, now you're the ones who don't belong. Security will escort you out. As they were led away, Martha turned back one last time. How could you be so cruel? Cruel? I laughed softly. Martha, I learned from the best. You spent 5 years teaching me exactly how to serve revenge. I just made sure to charge an appropriate price. The aftermath was spectacular. Martha's gambling debts became public knowledge, destroying what remained of her social standing. Emma's credit card addiction made headlines in the society pages. Richard moved back home with his mother. His reputation in the business world ruined when it became known that his success had actually been his wife's all along. I expanded my restaurant empire, opening new locations across the globe. Sometimes I'd hear rumors about my former in-laws. Martha working as a casino greeter, Emma selling real estate in a small town, Richard trying to date younger women who quickly lost interest when they discovered he wasn't actually wealthy. A year after the birthday dinner, I received a letter from Martha. I understand now, she wrote, what it feels like to be looked down upon, to be judged and found wanting. I'm sorry. I filed the letter away with my other documentation. Then I went back to running my empire, remembering how they'd laughed at the waitress who dared to marry into their family. Sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold. Sometimes it's best served with a very, very expensive wine pairing. The story made the rounds in business circles. The secret CEO who let her in-laws hang themselves with their own snobbery. I was asked to speak at conferences, not about revenge, but about patience, preparation, and the power of being underestimated. Success, I would tell the audience, isn't about proving people wrong. It's about letting them be wrong until the perfect moment. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't in getting even. It's in revealing who you were all along. My phone buzzed with a message from my executive team. Another restaurant group was interested in selling. I smiled, thinking of Martha serving drinks at the casino, of Emma showing tiny apartments, of Richard living in his childhood bedroom. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes all you need is a very expensive menu and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to present the bill.